Hello, guys. Welcome. LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and our people on Zoom. Welcome to MadGaines Live Shippers version. And we are going to move faster than normal because we have an hour. And we have only an hour. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open the floor up to our lead shipper, which is the great Godfather. He never wanted that name. He never asked for it, but he got it. And Ron Kane. And I'm going to have Ron introduce himself. We're going to go around in a circle. I'm going to add a couple things, and then we're going to get to the topics today. Go ahead, Ron.
Hi, I'm Ron. I've been in supply chain for almost 30 years, all on the shipper side. Worked for very big food companies, Nestle, Monster Energy, and then the last couple of years I've worked both in craft and macro beer, and now I'm on my own, consulting for supply chain efficiency with focus on procurement and freight.
Very nice. And is it only shippers hiring you, or carriers and brokers hiring you too?
No, carriers don't want to hire me.
Oh, I always thought that maybe if carriers and brokers would hire you because they'd want to up their game maybe and figure out how to make their shippers happy. At least that's what I would do. But
maybe someday.
I'm a lawyer. Maybe someday. Tony, you want to go next? My favorite Tony, which we gave a hashtag burger shipper, which is a long story.
I'm Tony. I work at Patrick Industries in Elkhart, Indiana. We're a supplier for the RV industry. I came from the steel industry before that, just manufacturing. I was a CDL driver before I was a shipper.
Very nice. And you're in Indiana now, right?
Correct.
Okay, hold on. Ready? Vitaly.
Oh, yes. You got it. You got it. You nailed it.
AKA V. I've been practicing with Jamin and JD on your name because I was messing it up.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so my name is Vitaly. I'm a senior transportation specialist for Aritzia. We are a women's clothing company based out of Vancouver in Canada. A couple of distribution centers, a couple of offices, and 100 stores across North America. I started out in a warehouse, went to an asset-based carrier, went to a brokerage, and now I work for the client side.
Oh, you have a good roundabout experience. John Brewer, welcome to the party, John.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on the show. My name's John Brewer. I've been in the industry over 25 years. I guess I've been the jack of all trades, master of none. I've worked on the carrier side. I've worked on the shipper, the distributor, the manufacturer, 3PLs, 4PLs, and a freight payment audit company.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yes. The last half of my career has been primarily food. Up until 3 years ago, I did retail, and now I'm doing QSR for one of the major burger chains here in the country. So glad to be on and look forward to answering some questions.
It was funny because I saw my husband had like a coupon for Carl's Jr. And I was like, hey, John's going to be on our show today. He's from that company. And he was like, you're such a nerd. Let me alone. I was so excited. All right, now we got Andrew Teal.
Hi, thank you for having me on. My name's Andrew, as Cassandra said. My background is primarily with shippers, carriers. I currently work at KBX Logistics, the shipping arm of Georgia Pacific. So kind of have a background with a little bit of everything, operations for a large carrier. I have it, like Tony, had a CDL since the day I turned 21 as well. So kind of seen all sides of that freight transportation area.
Yeah, and you used to be a Schneider too, right?
Yep, both in their M&R department and operations.
Nice, my favorite company. Hi, Kimberly. I'm so excited you were able to make it.
Not a problem. Glad to be here.
Give us a little background.
So I've been kind of in transportation for 6 or 7 years now. I also work at KBX Logistics, and I primarily work, with carriers and making sure they're successful on the shipper on our freight.
And are you guys both in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Yep. Green Bay.
Very nice. We talked about on Friday how you guys drink. You're lucky enough to drink Spotted Cow, which is my favorite beer in the whole world. Okay, so before we get started into the educational part, this is Ron's least favorite part.
Oh, not the dancing.
It's not dancing, Ron. It's Cassandra's asking, whoa, I'm disappearing. The tough questions. I'm disappearing into my background. It doesn't really like me that much. So here's what we're going to do just to warm up things and get you guys ready to have fun, but also be educated. So give me 1 second because I'm doing the I'm going to launch the poll for the attendees. I hope all my attendees see the poll. Okay, so I'm going to ask that you guys don't look at the poll, though, because it'll give you a head start. So don't look. Kimberly, I see you cheating.
Okay.
No cheating. Okay, so I'm going to go around the circle. I'm going to ask you guys some really, really tough questions. And you're going to have to be really truthful because I'm a lawyer and I can tell when someone's lying. Okay, we're going to start with Tony Darnell. Tony, would you rather be covered head to toe in glitter or maple syrup for 4
Maple syrup. No question. Maple syrup.
Really?
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, Ron, what do you think?
For myself?
Yeah.
Oh, glitter.
Glitter. I was going to put you as maple syrup. John?
I'd have to go with maple syrup.
Yeah, maple syrup. So where's that? Kimberly, you cheating, Kimberly.
I don't have it up anymore, but maple syrup, I hate glitter. It gets everywhere.
It does. And we have hair. Can you imagine?
Yeah, it doesn't come out. So
And then
definitely maple syrup.
there's some implications if you have leftover glitter on your body. Ron's walking around to visit clients and they're looking at him with glitter. I won't say it though.
Smell like
V?
vanilla.
Smell like vanilla.
Definitely glitter.
Definitely glitter.
Sweet enough. Don't eat anymore.
Andrew Teal?
Oh, hands down, maple syrup. Once it's gone, it's gone. Glitter never goes away.
All right, so the crowd says they voted for glitter by far. I cannot, you guys are crazy. I don't think you guys, I think it's men who don't know how hard it is to get glitter.
No, glitter is fancy.
Glitter does not go away as easy as you guys think it does.
Neither does maple syrup.
All right, here's the next game, and we're going to go right around the corner. I'm going to put some scary music on. No, let's actually make it uppity music, because this is a more uppity question. All right, John Brewer, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Would you rather have a mariachi band following you around everywhere for an entire day, playing right next to you, behind you, everywhere you go? Or you have to roller skate everywhere, anytime you're not sitting for an entire week?
I'm going to say mariachi band because I love Mexican food and I can't roller skate with a
I do
crowd.
too, and it's an excuse to have a margarita. All right, Kimberly?
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can roller skate, so I could
Just
go
the whole
get
week?
that part.
The whole
Yeah,
week?
the whole week would be hard, so I'm going to go with the mariachi band.
Okay, Tony?
Mariachi band, hands down. Just some chips and salsa.
Yeah, right.
Awesome.
Love that. All right, V?
The band.
The band? You're going with the band too? All right,
100%.
Andrew?
I'm going to go with the band. I love music, and it's probably a lot cheaper in the long run compared to medical bills that'll come with me being on wheels.
All right, I'll tell you guys that it is really close with the crowd. So 55% says the band, 45% says roller skating.
How is that one closer than the glitter?
Yeah, I know. I thought the same thing.
It's a
All right, you guys
fancy
have
audience.
You guys have one more, and then we'll get into education. All right, we're gonna do Kimberly, so she can't think. Kimberly, I think I know the answer to this one. Maybe. Would you rather sing better than Beyonce, or run faster than Usain Bolt? So you got singing really well or running really fast for the rest of your life.
I kind of would like to run faster. Running's
Me
not,
too.
I hate running, but it would be great to be able to run faster.
And I would like get in competitions when I see Ron at the bar or something. I'd be like, Ron, get a couple beers in you. Let's run it out. Whoever wins has to buy drinks for the rest of the night, and I'd always win.
Race to the corner.
Yeah. See, that's the stuff I like. Tony,
I'm
running or
with Kimberly.
singing? You're running?
I've spent so much time in a truck alone singing to myself that I don't need any more of that.
V?
Singing, 100%.
Singing? Nice. Andrew?
Tony and I are exactly the same. Nobody needs to hear me sing. Well or not, nobody needs that. I'd rather run.
Now, Andrew, can you imagine if you're in a meeting, though, and you're like, I'm going to sing you guys a song? And
Yeah,
no one
nobody
expects
needs to
you.
hear that. No, sorry.
I
John?
want to hear this now.
I'm going to have to go with running because you never know when you got to get out of there fast.
Yes. And wait, did Ron pick yet? Okay, Ron,
Yeah,
I
but-
didn't know what to pick for you on this one.
Well, if I'm already covered in glitter, I'd rather sing.
Well, they go together.
They do. He'd be amazing. That's Ron's sidekick. All right, the crowd has said, again, it was kind of close. 60% say sing, 40% say running fast. Dang, you guys. All right, so now we get on to the education, now that we're all warmed up. Ron, where do you want to start? Since you're our lead shipper, the freight godfather.
Well, we talked about this a little bit in advance, and given the theme of the week on reaction, response, and dealing with the new reality of COVID-19. First thing that's interesting to me, especially given what we're doing and the audience we're dealing with, is how our warehouse is going to now deal with new carriers coming in. How are you going to take what has been difficult for years, quite frankly, and add something really difficult like social distancing, hand washing, everything else into this new reality? As a shipper, how are we going to handle it, or how is it being handled by folks today?
Who wants to go first? Andrew?
I go first. From I think everybody's perspective, we all want everybody to be safe, obviously, right? So when we talk about things like that, I think there's a lot of great work being started and worked around as far as like an electronic bill of lading, so you don't have to do that hand off, in-person signature. But for us, we've got a lot of different shipping locations with different local concerns. So, some mills and places kind of do the check the driver on the way in, and then everything's kind of like normal.
Mm-hmm.
Others are saying, hey, you know what, just don't leave your truck. We'll get you loaded. We'll get you out of here. We'll let you know what's going to happen. And then one of the other things we've done is if a shipper, or I should say a carrier, is, sent us the update that, hey, we're on our way to pick up that load, we're going to shuttle that trailer out to a staging area for them, so they don't even have to get close to the mill.
Nice.
And have to worry about anything like that. We're going to have our yard hostler move that out to a spot for them and work with that. So I think it's really kind of getting around the idea of reducing risk for all involved, because the mill needs their people to execute their business. Carriers, obviously, the last thing you want to do is have a driver sick out and about on a road. So it's just working together and building relationships, and relationships get built as you work through issues and things that happen in the business. So I think it's been a lot of just back and forth and honest discussion amongst our loading docks and the carriers, and what to have the driver expect when they get there. If you are anywhere near the dock or any of those places, we do, request a facial covering of some sort as well.
Makes sense. Kimberly, I have a question for you. Since I know that you and Andrew work at the same locations, so you're probably going to have the same answers to Ron's questions, but what were the driver's responses, or Andrew could answer this too, and or the most difficult part about executing some of those changes? You got to unmute yourself too, girl. There we go. Wait, hold on. Let's unmute her.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself.
That's all right. Ron tries to mute me all the time, and I don't let him.
I mean, carriers have definitely been open and honest with us. I don't think anyone has really had any major issues, because everyone knows we're all working together on trying to get everyone safe, keeping things moving. The people we work with provide really good feedback to us, and we appreciate knowing what's working for their drivers and what's not working for their drivers, and then see if that's something that we can change within our system, because, I don't know who said in the beginning, we are all in this together. Everyone needs their employees to work at the mills and the drivers to keep functioning. So we haven't had any issues, and I'm hoping that it continues that way.
Go ahead, Ron, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I just want to ask both Andrew and Kimberly, before the current shipping situation, occurred in the warehouses, did your facilities have a lot of direct interaction with drivers coming in? Was it something that they would come into the warehouse either through a shipping office and a lot of hand holding, touching? I'm thinking like counting on docks, or is it less of a change today than what it might be first thing? Like, my background's food and beverage, and for us, it's been a phenomenal change. And the way you guys are describing it, it sounds like it's been more a kind of amp things up a little bit to make sure everything's okay, but not a major disruption to the day-to-day activity for yourselves.
You can take it, Andrew, if you want.
Oh, sure. I would say part of that is to do with how we execute a lot of our business is with carriers with drop and hook. So we don't have a lot of, obviously situations come up or whatever, but we don't have a lot of, drivers on the dock watching product go into trailers and doing it that way. I can think of facilities where, our trailer pool is in excess of 700 trailers. So from an efficiency standpoint for the mill and things like that, drop and hook is always preferred, and that's always kind of been the way we've done business. So we haven't had a whole lot of, like you said, that hand holding where you've always got 10, 15 drivers kind of standing around a loading dock or a lounge or anything like that, where you would have to worry about any sort of contamination or infection and types of things. So for the most part, our business has been able to continue functioning because we have been so drop and hook heavy.
Got it.
Is it similar, John, for you? Since we only have John for another 15 minutes, might as well suck some knowledge out of him while we have him.
Knowledge. Yeah, my business is probably a little bit more like Ron's. We've got some different challenges. One of the things, first of all great points added so far, and definitely all about keeping the safety of the people there. We have established pretty tight communication lines with our distribution partners, especially when it comes to communicating, not only restaurant openings or even dining room openings at restaurants, because we do drive through as well, but also any health and safety concerns. And then the other piece of it is because we have stores, we have stores all around the world, but primarily for the U.S., we have coast to coast, and each state is doing their own mandates of the PPE you're supposed to wear and all the rules and guidelines. We have drivers going into our restaurants from our distribution partner every day. So we have to make sure that they understand the guidelines, and we're all operating, playing by the rules, and keeping the health department happy with what we're trying to do. So a little bit different business model than even I've had in the past, but it's been, we've got a pretty solid relationship with our distribution partners, and we're working hand in hand to work through this as we would anything else.
Yeah. I'm getting a lot of questions in the feed and on Zoom about drop and hook is great. It works really well, but what's been the impact on appointment times and loading times, and how have you guys managed that?
I can speak to it for the warehouses that I've been dealing with, and it's actually some of the question I was asking from Kimberly and Andrew. I think a lot of warehouses, the ones that I'm at now currently, there's definitely been a focus on trying to make it better. To be blunt, I don't think anybody's really got a great solution, and I think that that's something that the carrier community really needs to make themselves aware of, because the infrastructure changes that are required just can't happen overnight. John, you're talking about folks coming into your restaurant. All I'm thinking of, I know that guy coming through the back door with a hand truck. He's still going to squeeze past people. That's just the way it is. The warehouse I'm actually at today, the one thing that they've done is they've moved the drivers outside to sit on a bench, but not everybody's 6 feet away. You can't really go to the truck because there's not really good radio or CB. So it's, unfortunately, I think a lot of it has come down to do the best you can and hope you really do a good job. I think the best thing for us as shippers we can do is really listen to some guidance from carriers as they come in. The fact is, none of us are going to be shipping experts, despite the fact that that's what we do every day. Carriers go to hundreds of us on a regular basis and see hundreds of us, which means they're going to see all the good things and the bad things. And it's where I see Jeff Booth, the comment he's making about it. I don't think there's a great solution for it unless you just have a lot of money, or you're in Palm Springs and people don't mind standing outside. But if you're in Green Bay and it's cold, yep. There's just not a really good answer for it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. The communication, just has to be open, and you have to, if there's things that aren't working, if you have solutions, communicate to your shipper, or just say, hey, this is really hard for my drivers. It doesn't work well, not following. I don't know if this is comfortable with them, but for our facilities, we're trying to stay, with as much of the CDC guidelines as possible, staying up on top of those.
Yeah. My friend Amanda Miller is asking a good question. She said, are there any procedures that are working with loading and unloading for non-drop hook shipments? Is there anything that's working that you guys would recommend and share as best practices?
We have a cheap, well, they're not cheap. They're about $100.
Interesting.
Infrared.
We start a sentence saying we have a cheap. Everybody's like, oh, what is it?
Nice hook.
Relatively cheap. Infrared scanner where we can test the driver before we let them into the facility. But most of our stuff is flatbed, Conestoga, curtain side. The guys are loading outside. They're tarping outside anyways underneath a canopy, but they're mostly on their own anyways, but they always want to go in and use our immaculate facilities. I wish we had. But at the end of the day, you got to let them have access to restrooms and a snack bar, our break area. And so we screen them before we come in, and nobody's had any kind of problem whatsoever. They're all very compliant, cordial. It's been a great deal. Instead of coming into our extravagant shipping office, they come to the window on the side of the building now.
Mhm.
That's nice. What was that infrared thing you were talking about?
It's just a little handheld temperature
Thermometer.
scanner.
It's a thermometer.
It's thermometer.
Oh, we're taking driver's temperatures. I see. Has anybody given you a hard time about that?
No, it's no touch.
It's no touch. Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody's been like, you can't take my temperature.
Nope, nobody's even bothered with
They
it.
won't let
They've
you.
been very compliant. Happy that we're doing it.
Huh. Okay.
We're wiping everything down with disinfectant. There's bottles of spray everywhere. We're not sharing pens. There's just everything we can do.
Hey, V, how are things going up there in Canada?
Well, somebody, Ron said the weather does play a big difference, and the way you set up the drivers. And it's true here. It's cold from November to, we just had snow in, last week, right? So it's really difficult to keep the drivers out completely, but we are trying to, not have anybody close by to the employees. But it's difficult. Like you said, the bathrooms, right? That's something. I guess the one benefit we have is in kind of the retail space. We rely on more trucks to come in at the same time and have them in and out really quick. So for example, for somebody like us, shipping outside of our province or our state where our distribution center is, you can just drop the trailer, come back the next day, and you can keep doing that, and there's no wait time.
Okay.
But when you're talking about the local deliveries, right, you're talking about a preset route of anywhere up to, call it 12 drivers in the same morning coming in for roughly the same time, right? Now they're in and out 20, 30 minutes, but you would see how, okay, the congestion there would be a real big problem, right? So now we have to start scheduling a lot more strict. We have to be a lot more strict with timings. We also have to be considerate of detention times, right? Because now, let's say we don't let drivers come in at all, right? And we say, okay, we're going to do everything, sit in your truck, okay? Or sit in this designated area that we have, right? We have to be conscious of, hey, we can't be keeping drivers here too long, right? We have to be making sure that our schedule on our side before it even gets to the floor is super crisp, because we don't want too many drivers coming into the facility at the same time, right? But beyond that, it's like everybody said, our industry is pretty hands-on, and there's a lot of different levels, right? Not all distribution centers are owned by the shipper, right? Sometimes you also deal with the 3PL company. They're the ones who would decide the rules, right? We can suggest to them, hey, can we please do this and that? But at the end of the day, it's their building. Same thing with malls, right? We deliver to a lot of malls. We don't get to say how a mall should operate their receiving. It would be up to them, and we would have to, work with them to make it work for our employees and our customers. Yeah.
Stupid question, but do the brokers and the carriers reach out? Because the mall would be like the consignee in this situation, right?
We try to do what we can to set everybody up for success. We do as much as we can ahead of time, right? We work with security, we work with our staff, and yeah, the carriers, obviously a lot of it hangs on them. Like if our carrier says, if a big carrier comes to you and says, hey, we have a gazillion customers, these are our policies, this is what we're following, and it doesn't align with what we're doing, that's just another layer that we're adding, because now we have to compromise. Okay, these drivers are not expected to wear masks, for example, for a delivery. Okay, well, here you go. Here's masks that we're providing. Driver says, I don't want to wear a mask. We can't force them, but we need that shipment delivered. How do we make it work? Now we have to add another layer. Leave it outside, leave it on the dock. We'll pay somebody to come in, lumper, right? Come in, pick it up from the dock, bring it over, right? So for us, because there's so many different areas, there is a lot more complications potentially.
We have John Brewer for another 6 minutes. Ron, do you have any good questions for him?
Actually, I was hoping that you would have something specific to, I know delivering to restaurants is so unique, but there's a lot of carriers. I'm assuming you guys are still using, your third-party distribution companies like a Cisco or McLean or whoever it is that Carl's Jr. gets. Have you had to overhaul any of your processes completely to get folks in and not deal with the folks who are inside the restaurant? I'm thinking like the inventory control process, the inbound receiving, all the things, putting the things into the freezer. Have you been able to come up with some processes to really streamline and make people safe?
Are you talking at the store level or the DC
At the
level?
store level, more specific at the store level.
Just trying to practice social distancing as much as possible. To your point earlier, these back of house for these restaurants is not always the biggest place in the area to be. We do have our distribution partners have provided their drivers with masks. So wherever they're mandated to wear masks by the municipalities, then they have to come in and do that. We have strict cleaning procedures in our restaurants, as well as back of house and front of house dining room area. So we're constantly cleaning that. We have the infrared thermometers, as mentioned earlier, we're using. So lots of PPE gear that the employees are wearing as well to try to protect that situation where you just can't maintain that 6 foot distance. We try to give them all the PPE they could need to maintain that as well as possible. And the driver's usually, he's probably in there, you're talking 1 to 2 deliveries a week, 1 to 2 hours per delivery. So it's not overly frequent. He's usually in and out pretty quick. And I know the restaurant staffs are obviously putting away the product as he's bringing it in, so it goes pretty quick. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's helpful. I guess the only one follow-up that I would have is, not just here in Southern California, but I know a lot of places throughout the country, masks in and of themselves to become a hotbed and I don't want to get into the political side at all, but understanding how close they are to your employees in the store, just for anybody. Have you seen anybody come in and, let's say, apply their political leanings to their use of PPE when they're delivering product?
We haven't seen it widespread. In fact, it's been minimal at best. I think I've heard one occurrence that a driver didn't wear, and we reached out to our distribution partner and said, hey, can you help us out? And has long since been resolved. So pretty good on compliance, like it was mentioned earlier. Just everybody just trying to stay safe and take care of each other. And most of these people, the people in the restaurants and even the people delivering to the stores I think they're more about safety and more about taking care of the end customer than they are politics. So everybody tends to comply and say, hey, we understand. So that works well for us.
Got it. Thanks.
I have a lot of questions in the feed, and maybe Tony, you have a wide range of experience, but you could help with this. A lot of people are mentioning that they have been waiting. A lot of carriers have been waiting for 4 hours. Seems to be the common. Yeah, you're laughing. 4 hours seems to be the common number I'm seeing in the feed over here on LinkedIn. And Jonathan Trimble is talking about it. So is one of my favorite people, Chris Jolly. Do you have any advice or thoughts around that, or have you been seeing that, or is it because you guys are flatbed you haven't had as many issues?
I mean, we don't have a lot of commercial shipments. We do the majority of our deliveries are made on our fleet, so our outside shipments are very minimal as a part of the whole. But usually when they do, they're coming from another place. They've made their delivery, and we're getting them in the afternoon. We normally get our outside carriers between noon and 3 or 4 o'clock. So, 1 or 2 a day not a big issue for us, but I can see where it could be for, where I was previously. There tends to be lines in the steel business. I don't know how they're handling that.
Yeah. Anybody else hearing that, or are you guys just really good at what you do and people aren't waiting 4 hours?
I think this is where that partnership between carrier and shipper comes into play. as long as the two sides are talking and are planning things out properly, at least on our end in what we do, right, with appropriate planning and timelines and delivery and pickup windows, we have not been seeing that. But that's just on our end because our stuff is already, as is, very, pre-planned heavily.
I've actually seen a lot of it. I mean, what the guys are asking about for 4 hours. I think the thing that's interesting is that right when everything started to shut down, there wasn't a real consistent approach to essential versus non-essential. I'll give you one example. Craft beer in Southern California was considered essential. Personally, yeah. I'm grateful that it was considered essential. But the challenge became that the factories themselves had to have an internal structure to ensure people, quote unquote, felt safe. So you had larger than normal absenteeism. Sure, there's folks that are happy about having jobs, but then there's folks that, genuinely were concerned, and you can understand why. And that really started to put a crunch on warehouses. We did see issues with different places where carriers were making requests for different appointment times than what was typical. So less 24/7 for some of the big places. And then, as I said very earlier, people really figuring out some of these rules on the fly absolutely crushed a lot of warehouses because, putting them outside versus in the room. How do you do it? How do you get them to go to the side window versus the front window? And, deciding on the company, everybody comes up with different rules. So the lack of a consistent industry guidance on how to do certain things coupled with, frankly, a lot of really rudimentary processes has caused it. I think this is separate to this conversation. It's an interesting conversation because there's such a concern about accessorials and how infrequently they're paid correctly, that if that was governed, 4 hours would suck, but it wouldn't crush you because you would know you would get covered for your accessorials.
And I think, Ron, maybe that needs to be next week topic or something, because I'm seeing a lot of chatter and activity about both of those topics, both waiting for a long time, detention time, and these are some of the big names that are being listed in the feed of having long appointment times. And maybe the group or you, Ron, like when you come in, what do you assess for your clients when they tell you they got a big problem, they got carriers waiting around for hours?
Yeah, I think it's, Andrew and Kimberly both brought up, dropping hooks where you can do it needs to be a big focus. I'm actually working with a company right now on a project to try to help them expand it. Some companies, actually, and it's a question, I don't know if anybody on the panel here can answer it. One of the biggest challenges that I've seen are high value loads. So if you are shipping although, Best Buy is only doing at the door, but Walmart can go in, but things like televisions, which typically require the carrier to be on the dock to count the televisions go into the trailer. I haven't heard of a real good answer on how do you still do that and stay safe. That's a touch point that's dangerous. And these types of things, those types of companies have just frankly not done a good job on responding to this. I think that we've all done good jobs at some of the easy stuff, and I think some of us have been more clever than others on things that maybe people didn't think about. But I think collectively, warehouses, shippers don't have a great series of answers because it's not been that long. We don't have money, and we don't have experts that work for us that can help us do it. If you're lucky, you have an environmental health and safety manager that can kind of get their arms wrapped around it. But Tony, I don't know if you do. I tell you, none of the people that I'm working with right now have one. So it's catch as catch can.
We do, and they're a great resource. They've been great helps during this whole time. We've got plans and processes and procedure, and we've had 6 weeks to figure it out. It's been a godsend.
Yeah, and to go with Tony, I've worked other places that have had those resources, and they're great. But sometimes you step back and you realize that there's probably nobody at any of these warehouses, any of these shippers, carriers that was alive during the Spanish flu in 1917. So a lot of figuring it out on the go. And I think people have been really, really open to the understanding of, hey, this is really unprecedented. 94% of the American public was on a lockdown order. So how do we work through that? And then I think that kind of goes to where we've had, hey, it's a 4-hour wait. There's PPE questions. There's, hey, for the last 10 years, I've gone to this shipper this way. Now I have to do it that way. People have understood that. And I think that's a testament to a lot of the quality work that people are doing in our industry to understand what it means to execute the business, but also, like Ron had said, what is or isn't quote unquote essential. And that's changing from state to state, municipality to municipality, and just working through that. And I think, it's a lot of times there's that friction between shipper, carrier, broker. And I think in this particular subject, everybody's really done a good job as far as working through the situations they've had and not letting it become ugly.
And I think one of the other things that we've got to at least be honest with ourselves about, anything that's out of the ordinary, like a 4-hour delay, it's going to be amplified because there is a sizable percentage of this population that quote unquote feels they're being underpaid. They're complaining about the $1.50 a mile or $1.20, and they're on that receiving end. So if you're already angry, these types of things are going to amp it up. And this is a pretty bad confluence of events where you've got the low rates, you've got the difficulties getting into specific shippers. You don't know if you're going to have to deadhead out of there. It's just a lot of different things that are making it really damn tough. And every one of us is probably doing it just slightly different. That if you're a carrier, your life is going to be challenging depending on whose stock door you happen to back into. Some might have it really under control and everything's cool, and some just might be driving you crazy. So it's a tough situation. I would not want to be behind the wheel of a truck right now. It's a pretty tough one.
Yeah, I know that in the beginning of the COVID flurry of issues, the biggest issue that was coming up is drivers no longer being allowed on the dock, and drivers not being allowed to touch or go near BOL, and what to do then. Because I think that it's funny that we still use paper BOLs. So isn't that so weird? And I never thought about it until COVID came along. And then I'm like, why do we? And then when shippers were saying, sorry, you don't get to go near the BOL, we're going to do everything electronically, you're not even going to be part of it, drivers kind of lost their mind. They didn't know what to do without that piece of paper. Has anybody else gone through that phase?
Yeah, we were still doing everything on paper up until COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
Though we are always trying to work with our partners to have them implement the digital solution in a blue sky, perfect world. We'd like both as a backup. And we, kind of more to Ron's point, we also ship high value shipments, clothing, and it's mid-luxury clothing, right? So there's quite a bit of a value to a full trailer. So we are seeing all those challenges. And yeah, right now, going from one of our partners, let's say 10 years, here's a paper BOL, here's a paper waybill, to can't be on the dock, sorry. That's a tough sell. So, but I think, at least for us, our partners have been very helpful, very accommodating, which has been great to see. Everybody's kind of come together, so it's been pretty good. Yeah,
I feel like your, I don't know, in my world, when I imagine you, V, doing your job, your world is even extra hard because you've got consignees that you don't own, that you don't have control over.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Like that would drive me nuts. Tony, do you have do you control the consignees?
No, we're shipping right out of the manufacturing plant.
Oh, you are?
It's going directly to the customer.
And how have you been handling that? Were there a lot of changes with regards to COVID and the flurry of different things going on? Did everybody have different requirements?
Oh yeah, it was a definite learning curve. I've missed one day so far. I guess we were essential because of the housing industry and the market that we're serving there. And we, thankfully, like I said, our EHS guys have come up with a plan. We've provided all of the procedures and the processes and the materials, the PPE and the sanitizers. We had an outside company sanitizing the entire building, inside and out, the factory floor, the offices, everything. We want to keep our carriers safe. We want to keep our employees safe. We want to keep them safe from each other. And we've marked the paint on the floors. We've got work procedures and training. And it's been pretty intense. Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Andrew or Kimberly, did you guys, all your consignees, do you control those locations or? No?
We don't control them. So, our CSR teams have done a great job of reaching out to all of their the customers they work with and knowing kind of what the expectations are, who's going to be open and who's not, and then adjusting accordingly.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off that is, we have developed some electronic BOL processes, and we're working with our partners both in the consignee space and the carrier space, and understanding how to roll that out. How does that work? whether it's a carrier by carrier or if it's a shipper and consignee, because as Kim said, we don't control our consignees. We might be shipping direct to stores. We might ship to a DC. We're shipping to customers. Our freight was definitely considered essential. If you think about some of the things we make as far as toilet tissue and things like that, everybody was kind of looking for it. And I was getting phone calls of like, what can you get me? And things like that.
And toilet paper ASAP.
Yeah, exactly. So everybody understands it. And I think an electronic bill of lading was probably coming long before COVID. It was just COVID has provided that magnifying glass of we need to get this done. I saw an article today where the Ocean Shipper Consortium is saying, hey, we need to come up with a very standardized electronic BOL. And if you think about it, right, I can go to PetSmart. I can buy a ton of cat food, and then they'll say, do you want me to email you your receipt? And what's a BOL? It's a receipt for the freight you received. Why can I do that at PetSmart, but I can't do that at a multi-billion-dollar consumer products company, whoever that is, right? So it's coming. I think COVID's going to help us move it along just that much quicker.
And I told my carriers that came to me and brokers that were like, what do we do? We're not even allowed to notate the bill of lading anymore because we don't go near it. And I'm like, all you do is send an email to your customer, whoever your operations manager are, your customer sales folks, the broker, and just let them know, hey, I wasn't able to sign the BOL, but the shipment, and I wasn't able to inspect the shipment. Just notate it. I mean, that's how you notate things. You just email. And it's not that big of a deal. They still will have the same legal implications.
I was going to say, it's interesting though. I've got a friend of mine that has a transportation company, and he actually gave me some feedback that kind of surprised me. It's not necessarily the shippers or even the receiver this issue. He's had some problems with his drivers on basic traffic stops, to where the police are always looking for the bill of lading to make sure that what you're carrying and what the weight is. And they're so used to having that document that you hand out the window and you talk, and now, well, it's on my phone. Just trust me.
But okay, so I don't accept that as an excuse, because when you're pulled
I'm not saying it's a good excuse.
I know. I'm inventing now because that's why carriers are starting to bitch about ELDs, and they're like, when we're pulled over and they want to know what our hours are, we don't have it because it's electronic. And I'm like, no, that you can, like, I know there are some really big carriers that there's a way that the police officer can email and get the logs right away. So I would hopefully encourage those out there that, they can email the police officers. But you're right. That is a big, that's a new piece too.
Yeah, I think it speaks to, frankly, what MadGaines as total with everything is putting together, where it's folks that are doing the same thing, trying to create some industry standards. And that's where, this conversation, asking folks about how they're doing it. We as shippers don't have clear, concise standards. And Jeffrey Dickinson's on Zoom asking a question about communicating to carriers changes that are taking place, which I think is a great idea. The problem is, if you're a carrier and you're picking up from hundreds of different places, you can end up with hundreds of different protocols based on how good the individual shipper is or is not, versus us as shippers even creating loose standards. And hopefully these types of conversations will at least make people think, hey, I know that that's what they're doing up in Green Bay, or this is what's happening out in Indiana. And can come up with some
and just ways. Ron Jamin is saying that he's had the same issue in California with carriers, traffic stops. And Ingrid says DOT doesn't accept electronic inspection upon inspection.
So there you go.
There you go. DOT inspection, what the? Get it together, DOT. But I'm sure they're not.
But it makes it really interesting because you try to solve for a problem with electronics, because we as shippers think it's stupid for us to still write paper. But then the one person that really needs it, they're jammed up because they don't have ability to take it.
Is there any way that are you guys, those of you who have the electronic bill of lading process in place or are trying to get it in place, can you print out a copy and give it to the driver just as a copy? Don't require a signature. They keep the piece of paper and they go away, but maybe that's a solution that we need to.
As long as they don't mind touch, but again, it goes back to that same thing. This is a person then again taking it and giving it to them. Like, do we laminate it and sanitize it? This is where it's the same thing with like marking something short over damaged on a bill of lading, something as simple as that, right? Where now that's an issue because it's not the same on digital. even on digital right now, you still have to sign either the terminal or the phone, or the carrier does it for you, right? But then there's always these little instances where, well, this is short, well, this is signed, well, it's not signed, etc. Right? So yeah, we're still thinking about.
Yeah, and that's tough. I keep telling carriers when they get stuck in that situation, the best thing is to take pictures, immediately email whoever your point of contact is. So you're documenting before you leave the shipper's location, you're documenting it. Interestingly, in the feed, let's see, Eric Thornton says an electronic BOL would need an uploading feature for lumber receipts, would enhance billing efficiencies for all parties. So
He's
another
right.
little tag along too. Ron, when you go in and you're talking to clients, how many of them are actually doing all this electronically?
Virtually none. Almost all in food and beverage is still done by hand. I think a lot of it, though, is food and beverage tends to be a lot of weighing out before we cube out. They don't have high values by and large. I mean, I'm dealing with a spirits company now, which is definitely different. But most food, for the most, it's not a lot of value to it. So inventory, Bill, you're talking about damage, loss. That all becomes critical. A lot of signatures, a lot of handing things off. It's all paperwork, and you talked about spraying it. I work with one group where they actually put the bill of lading into a plastic bag, sprayed the plastic bag down with sanitizer, got the glove, and handed it across.
Yeah.
That was literally the only way they could come up with some semblance of cleanliness.
Yep.
Is it possible to put a mini printer in a truck so a driver can just come back in it and print his digital copy?
Yeah, there are those little printers. I remember salespeople have them. That's
a thing. I don't know. Like I'm actually
that's
just
a good
genuinely
idea.
curious. Or like putting a printer in the driver area so it's no touch. They just take the paper themselves and that's it. I don't know.
The thing is then we're asking a lot of these. I don't know how many truck drivers are delivering their owner operators, or there's much smaller companies. I know because I see somebody Jess T says that's why we use a company that provides a tablet for their ELDs and their BOLs.
Well, would that work now for that? What Ingrid was saying for the DOT? Like, can you show them a tablet?
And that's
I don't think so.
That's ridiculous. If they'll accept a electronic ELD, why wouldn't they accept electronic BOL? That's ridiculous.
I'm just repeating what I've heard. Don't.
But I think that brings up a good question for the industry is, we're being pushed to make this safe for everybody, right? And we're being pushed, shippers, receivers, carriers, to electronic logs and things like that. So we need, I don't think there's any friction as far as saying, no, I don't want to change. It's okay. Tell me what to change to.
Right.
How do we do this? What is going to work for you, Mr. Police officer on the side of the road at 2:00 in the morning in, Inland Empire, California? That's also going to work for, the scale house, which has got different, infrastructure behind it, or the dock and things like that. And I think the industry is rather open to it in that sense, but it's a consensus. What are we going to do? Because I can't have Schneider National with 14,000 trucks putting little printers in all of them, and then somebody else who doesn't have that cash to do it. It just doesn't work.
Or put in a different printer, so you have beta versus VHS. Sorry for the old.
No,
actually, Andrew, one thing that always part of the challenge, I think, at least as I look at it, is the definition of the industry. Very infrequently do shippers, brokers, carriers act as a lobbying group collectively to try to push it. Even though all of us are doing the exact same thing, we're just touching different ends. It's always, the carriers and the brokers and the shippers, and then you can start breaking us down into manufacturers and 3PLs and everything else, where there are no collective industry standards for all of us to touch this entire thing eventually to fall on. So it's the carriers are mad because they can't do this, and we're like, I'm out. I'm doing electronic because that's what's right and easy, because you don't even think about the fact that DOT doesn't accept it.
That's crazy.
Don't ever leverage or lobby on their behalf.
We should have a guest from the DOT on the
We
show.
will. We will next week. If you guys want to do this again, we can have a guest. I know somebody I'm close with. He's the administrator, Jim Mullen. We can have him come on and talk to us about it. I have a question though. This is a dumb lawyer question who doesn't know much about much, but how come with Final Mile, they can have a touchless feature. They have all these apps on their phones, like really easy things. They take a picture of the product. They have the consignee sign. How come they do it better in final mile versus the OTR world?
They've been forced to. Their volume is so high.
Consumers?
You think about a UPS driver or even that final mile that's going to do six to 25 deliveries a day. All of a sudden it became important to them. It wasn't important for a lot of folks prior to that, in my opinion.
I think I agree with you 100% because I think beer distributing world, it's all done electronically, same thing last mile. But the one thing that is different, I had a fleet of 110 trucks at Stone that I was in control of. They don't get pulled off into scales, and if they're on city streets, so they're not dealing with a lot of the, I'm going to call it the police infrastructure, the Department of Transportation infrastructure that over the road carriers have to deal with. You know, I've never had one of my route trucks pulled over for a quote unquote random brake check, you know, which a tractor would have. So I think it's allowed them to be, like Andrew said, a hell of a lot more flexible and quick to deal with issues than that the other industry even can, even if they wanted to.
V, is this the same thing going on in your world as well? Like still trying to figure out the electronic process, or you guys got it all buttoned up and you're just giggling at us in your head?
It's carrier per carrier. Every carrier is different, right? And because we really like carriers that are specific to a region, because they're usually the professionals in that region. You literally have like 10 partners with 10 different systems. You know, we have to adapt to that. But yeah, for example, you know, FedEx, who will do all of our e-com, completely touchless. Nobody has to touch anything. They drop a trailer, everything's put on a skid, label, scan, throw it in the truck, gone, right? Nobody touches anything.
Yeah.
But what happens if they get pulled over, right? We never even get to hear about that, honestly.
That's true. Figure that out.
Yeah, but there are some vendors who are still, some carriers who are still, they have capabilities, they're working on it, or they were working on it, but they're still kind of in the old way. And we can go one of two ways. We can look at different partners, or we can encourage them to move to digital, right?
Yeah.
But
well, let's talk about that though. Can like Ron, any of your clients force? I don't like to say the word force, but they have so much negotiating power. Can't they say, "Here's our app. You have to download it on your phone, or you don't get any business. You don't get paid nothing."
Your question timing is fascinating because if you look at on the Zoom, somebody anonymously said, sadly, the only reason a paper bill of lading exists is to slow down payment. I think that's truly a very big problem. That as a shipper, it depends on how adept your accounting system is, how quickly you want to get your carriers paid. And that's, I've run the gamut. So those companies who are comfortable with slower pace, are comfortable debating detention of 15 minutes versus an hour and 20 minutes, is going to be perfectly happy dealing with these paper bill reports.
Wow. And you know, they could just take a picture and send it.
Yeah,
that's
but
what
for a lot of companies, I mean, Monster, for as big a company as they are, their accounting practices are still very much attached to paper. They go through them one by one. They don't even use like a CAS or somebody else to dot it. Everything's done by hand. So every company's strategy, and whoever anonymous is, I agree with them. I think they're slowing it down. It's caused a problem.
Steve Perez says something interesting on the feed. He said that you have to show the drivers how to use the app and the tool and all that jazz, and that's the hard part about implementing such an idea. I see Tony shaking.
I got a driver who carries a flip phone.
Come on.
At least he carries a phone.
That goes back to no standardization, you know, like
yes, it does.
You mentioned you can get an electronic receipt, but all of us know what receipts look like when we get them from a store. They're not too different. It's the same reel, it's the same numbers, it's everything versus all of these things we're talking about apps. Everybody's going to make a custom one because theirs is better versus this is the basic app for bills of lading.
But Ron, I'm going to push you though, is you guys have the negotiating power.
Agreed.
You can standardize this if you want to. You guys, I mean, shit, the drivers will probably end up using, that's my first curse word.
You did good.
Almost did it. It's been 54 minutes. I almost made it. I told myself today. Okay. But you guys have the negotiating power. Like, is it just not, is it not like a real ROI? on something like this? Is that what it is? Like, I don't mean that. Maybe Ron's the best person to answer this.
No, I don't think I'm the best person to answer it, but I can give you my opinion. I think that we are the best position to do it. I think, to be fair to the industry, there's not a lot of conversation to truly understand it. You know, those of us, the 6 of us sitting here right now have a broader spectrum of understanding.
Yeah.
From the 150 or so carriers or brokers who now have an understanding of what shippers are going through. And as this thing grows, we also have more resources to where I wouldn't know who to talk to for a flatbed. I know I can pick up the phone, call Tony now if I got a problem with something, because I know I can talk to Tony. Where these types of things are going to do it, I think there's a hell of a lot more upside to us going electronic for a bunch of different reasons.
Yeah.
But there needs to be an industry standard, and it's got to start somewhere. And if it starts with 6 people, fine, that's where it starts.
Yeah.
But
Because you guys could do GPS and electronic BOL.
Mhm.
That way you're no more wondering where the driver is and all that BS.
Yep.
I
And which
know
would
that
also
there's some
proof for
exceptions.
accessorials, because if you can see
That
them,
too.
you know, in and out, you don't have to worry about that. You got detention.
Yeah.
Tech takes time. That's another thing. If tomorrow we go to our partners and say, hey, you have to implement this, they have to wade through thousands of software. Then they have to go there, try to buy it, implement it, like
They'll
teach
do it.
all their drivers.
They'll
Well,
do
you
it.
know,
But,
at EDI,
but it takes time. It takes time, though.
Yeah, it does.
That's another thing. How long does that even take? Like, let's say you have a fleet of 1,000 trucks.
But Steve Perez says again, good comment, Steve. LTL, they're already doing it. Ron already brought up that FedEx is just done and done. They're good on all this stuff. And you know, back in the day when I first started in the industry, by the way, carriers used to own that bill of lading, and now shippers own that bill of lading. So this could work, you guys. We could do this because others in the industry are already doing it. I think you guys, yeah, and doing it well. The problem is the smaller carriers, the owner operators, like Tony said, some of them only have a flip phone, but you want to run freight, you'll figure it out. You figured out they figuring out the complex hours of service rules. Like, those things
They're figuring out how to electronically submit proof of deliveries to a third-party billing company.
There you go. They get paid. They'll figure it out.
Yep. Just make one ubiquitous app that works.
Yes. So it'll be interesting. I wonder how many vendors are going to pop up after this conversation.
I can't wait for my
I can
inbox.
save you, Andrew, 45% on your freight charges and all your problems. And Kimberly can hang out and not have to worry about where these trucks are all the time. So Ron, we have 3 minutes left. What would you like to do with those 3 minutes?
I just actually have one real quick question. The changes that have happened because of COVID-19, anybody had those changes be so disruptive, or I'm sorry, such a positive change within their business that this is just going to be the way you do work going forward, that you're not going to go back to doing things the old way?
Oh, yeah, we're never going back. I think going forward, like whatever changes we push out here are all positive. And if anything, I think Andrew pointed out earlier, we've expedited some of those changes, right? Like at the end of the day, we want to be in control on the dock. In theory, that's our best way. Validating the freight, different story. But, you know, digital bill of ladings, right? Stricter delivery and pickup schedules, so there's less detention, less driver waiting times, better conditions for drivers at our facilities, right? These are all great things, and these are things that, at least for us, will be pushed out. So in a way, yeah, closing 100 stores wasn't great, obviously, but on the distribution end, yeah, there's definitely some interesting changes that will come from it, and I don't see us going back afterwards.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
There's so much happening with consolidation and the contraction that we're going through. You know, people in our business are losing jobs. I just don't see going back. This isn't going to go away tomorrow. So we're just going to have to figure out how to deal with it as we go every day.
I would say one thing I've seen it, and it's not necessarily tied to a process, but with everybody working from home, it seems to have reinforced the idea of communication, which has always been a bogeyman within the industry. But what I have seen since COVID-19, our ability as an organization, as people within the industry to respond to issues, that timeline has gotten much shorter. People, I think, are much more involved, much more understanding of upstream, downstream issues and things like that. And for my dollar, I guess that's probably the biggest thing I've seen as far as people within the industry is just, hey, we're flowing to the problem much quicker and making decisions faster.
That's so true. Kimberly, what are your thoughts?
I think you know, with everything that's going on, a lot of people have come up with a lot of creative solutions. And I think it's having these open conversations or just developing those solutions even more. So I think that's going to continue happening, and it's just going to help push along our industry.
Ron, you want to close out for us?
I was going to say, no, I appreciate everybody's time and their openness and helping to try to bring this industry some synergy and helping, frankly, everybody within the supply chain. So it's a fantastic way to spend an hour.
And we're going to keep talking about this stuff. So every Tuesday, we're going to have a shippers show where we're going to talk about this type of stuff. And it is helpful to have the carriers and the brokers participating in these comments and adding value to this. But I want to make sure that this show gives the shippers the microphone. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., we have the carrier show. Thursday, we have the broker show. And then Friday, we have the wild one where it's beer and cursing. And I get to curse again, thank God. It's been hard, Ron. It's been like I've had to think before I speak. I've had to like pretend there are kids around. It's just
I haven't gotten angry.
And yeah, I haven't even gotten angry yet. I've been really well behaved. I hope you guys remember this. So thank you for your time, you guys. And this show will be available on my podcast and on YouTube and all that jazz. So please, by the way, guys, don't thunder thump my shippers. Like, thank you for coming, but don't tell them you're going to save them 45% on their freight. Leave them alone. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Great job.
Thanks.
Really great
All right.
show.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for having me.